Carl Jung. Why awakening makes you feel tired of people. Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you. Carl Jung once said this, revealing one of the deepest truths about spiritual awakening. When your consciousness expands, the world you once knew begins to feel unfamiliar. The conversations, the noise, and even certain relationships may no longer resonate, not because you've become cold, but because your soul has grown quieter, wiser, and more selective with its energy. So, if you've been feeling tired of people lately, perhaps it's not disconnection, but transformation. Have you ever felt this shift yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story might be the reminder someone needs today. 1. Core meaning of awakening fatigue. After a spiritual awakening, you begin to notice that the world no longer feels the same. The conversations, the gatherings, even the laughter that once comforted you now seems strangely hollow. It's not that you've grown cold or antisocial. It's that your awareness has expanded beyond the noise. Your spirit starts to crave truth over entertainment, depth over distraction, and silence over small talk. You feel the subtle difference between genuine connection and energy exchange that drains your soul. Carl Jung once said that loneliness does not come from having no one around you, but from being unable to express what truly matters to your heart. And that's precisely what happens after awakening. You outgrow the need to fit in and begin to long for what is real. You start to realize that your fatigue isn't physical, but spiritual. Your energy, once freely shared with everyone, now becomes sacred. When you awaken, your internal frequency changes. You begin to vibrate at a higher level of awareness. Every interaction becomes an energetic exchange that either nourishes or depletes you. The conversations rooted in fear, gossip, or ego suddenly feel heavier, almost painful. Your system resists what no longer aligns with your truth. This exhaustion is not weakness. It's your soul's way of signaling that something within you has evolved. Spiritual awakening makes you more sensitive to dishonesty, chaos, and emotional noise because you now perceive beyond words. You sense intention, energy, and authenticity. You might start to withdraw, not out of arrogance, but because you need time to understand this new sensitivity. The silence that once frightened you now feels like home. The solitude you once avoided becomes healing. You learn to honor your inner world instead of escaping from it. The need to please, to overextend, to carry others' pain begins to dissolve. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming whole within yourself. You stop seeking validation from others and instead build a relationship with your own soul. That's why so many awakened individuals feel detached. They are not broken or bitter. They are integrating a deeper level of truth that no longer fits into the old framework of social expectation. The people who remain asleep might accuse you of changing, and in truth, you have. You've changed from seeking company to seeking peace. You've changed from wanting to be understood to simply understanding yourself. The fatigue you feel around certain people is not personal, it's energetic misalignment. Their energy still echoes with old patterns, while yours vibrates with new awareness. This is why you find it hard to tolerate meaningless conversations or environments filled with ego. You're not rejecting them. Your energy is simply no longer compatible. Like a radio tuned to a different frequency, You cannot hear the same static anymore. But this phase, as isolating as it seems, is sacred. The loneliness that accompanies awakening is the soul's cocoon, the space where transformation deepens. It's in this solitude that you learn to rebuild your boundaries, to protect your peace, and to listen to the quiet wisdom of your spirit. The exhaustion eventually becomes clarity. The silence becomes understanding. And what you once called loneliness transforms into serenity. Spirituality is not about escaping the world, but learning how to live in it without losing yourself. You begin to see that love does not mean self-sacrifice, that compassion does not mean absorption, and that connection is only true when it flows in both directions. So when you feel tired of people after awakening, understand this: your soul is not rejecting humanity, it's refining its frequency. The fatigue is not a sign of disconnection, but of discernment. It's the moment your spirit chooses authenticity over adaptation. It's the stage where you stop dimming your light to make others comfortable and start walking in your truth, even if that means walking alone for a while. This is the true essence of spiritual awakening, a return to your own energy, your own center, and the quiet strength of your authentic self. Have you ever felt that deep exhaustion after realizing how differently you now see the world? That's the essence of awakening fatigue. Share your experience in the comments so we can grow together. And if you haven't reached that stage yet, type "I'm awakening" to affirm your journey and join this path of spiritual wisdom and transformation. 2. Jung's explanation: individuation and the persona. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the sacred unfolding of your true self beneath the layers of who you were taught to be. It's the moment when your spirit begins to awaken and you realize that much of what you once called connection was actually performance. For so long, you've worn the persona, a mask crafted to keep you safe to please, to be accepted, to fit neatly into the expectations of others. But when spirituality begins to stir inside you, that mask starts to crack. You begin to feel an inner restlessness, a sense that pretending no longer feels natural, that your energy is too sacred to spend on shallow exchanges or empty routines. Suddenly, conversations that once seemed normal begin to feel hollow, and you find yourself retreating from the noise because something deep within you is asking for truth, silence, and depth instead of approval. This is the fatigue of awakening the body and nervous system still trying to replay the old patterns of compliance, while the soul demands authenticity. It's not that you dislike people, it's that your vibration is changing. Your system is detoxing from the habit of small talk and superficial validation, learning instead to breathe in stillness, honesty, and meaning. Jung saw this as the tension between the persona and the self, that sacred conflict where your conditioned self starts to dissolve and your real essence begins to rise. The tiredness comes from fighting between two worlds, the external one built on expectation and the inner one blooming with truth. You're shedding the false identities that once helped you survive, but now keep you from living fully. This exhaustion is the soul's signal that it's time to stop performing and start being. As your consciousness expands, you may feel disoriented, unsure where you belong, or why you can no longer tolerate the things you once did. But this confusion is part of spiritual growth. It's what happens when the old self dies and the new one hasn't fully taken form yet. The mask you wore for years starts falling away, and with it, all the relationships and attachments built upon illusion. What you feel as loss is actually purification. Every wave of fatigue is a cleansing current, washing away what no longer aligns with your higher vibration. You are reclaiming energy from every moment you once betrayed your truth just to belong. That's why you crave solitude not as escape, but as renewal. In silence, your energy resets, your intuition sharpens, and your inner being starts to harmonize with the rhythm of authenticity. Spirituality teaches that when you are finally honest with yourself, you no longer need to force connection. You begin to attract what resonates with your soul rather than what pleases your mask. The tiredness is not a weakness, it's an initiation. It's the universe whispering, rest, because your energy is evolving. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. You are now making it conscious you're awakening to the truth of who you are. And as you release what's false, your relationships shift from performance to presence, from obligation to resonance. In this sacred exhaustion, you are not losing people. You are gaining yourself. The fatigue fades the moment you stop pretending. Then what remains is peace, the quiet strength of a soul finally aligned with its own light. If this message from Carl Jung resonated with your awakening journey, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Let's grow together on this path of individuation and true self-discovery. 3. The shadow and deep sensitivity. As you awaken, you begin to see through the layers of illusion that once felt normal. You no longer see people only by their smiles or words, but by the vibration that lies beneath. You sense the sadness hiding behind laughter, the insecurity hidden beneath arrogance, the exhaustion behind perfection. You notice your own shadow too, the denied parts of you that once lived unseen. This awakening doesn't make you superior. It simply makes you aware. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And that's what awakening does. It forces you to see both your inner darkness and the collective pain of others. It's not that people suddenly changed. It's that your perception sharpened, your empathy deepened, and your energy became sensitive to what was once invisible. The deeper your spiritual wisdom grows, the more unbearable falseness becomes. You used to sit through small talk with ease, nodding politely as conversations floated on the surface. But now, every empty exchange feels heavy. The soul that once tolerated pretense now craves truth, depth, and genuine presence. Your energy rejects what is fake, not because you judge it, but because your frequency has risen above it. You feel people's intentions before they speak. You sense tension before it erupts. You notice when words don't match emotions. This sensitivity can make the world feel louder, heavier, and more chaotic, yet it is a sacred sign of transformation. Your soul is learning to navigate the world not through logic, but through vibration. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the journey toward wholeness, where light and shadow, consciousness and unconsciousness merge into one. It's a sacred integration that changes how you relate to everyone around you. You begin to see beyond personalities into the deeper stories people carry, their unhealed wounds, their silent fears, their inner children still longing to be seen. You don't just hear what people say. You feel what their souls are trying to express. That's why awakening can make you feel tired of people, not because you lack compassion, but because you can no longer pretend. The truth is, you were never meant to stay comfortable in the noise. Your fatigue is not rejection, it's evolution. As your spiritual awakening unfolds, you learn that solitude is not loneliness, it's recalibration. Every moment you spend in silence, your energy reorganizes itself, shedding layers of old vibrations that no longer belong to you. You stop needing to explain yourself because peace has become your language. You no longer chase validation because truth has become your home. To the awakened soul, presence is everything. Carl Jung once wrote, "Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." And so you keep looking within, learning to love from a higher place, not through attachment or sacrifice, but through clarity and understanding. You realize that love is not about fixing others. It's about staying rooted in your own light so deeply that your very presence becomes healing. That is the essence of spiritual wisdom, seeing the world as it is, feeling it deeply, and still choosing to respond with awareness instead of reaction. Comment below. I embrace my shadow with love. If you're ready to turn your deep sensitivity into spiritual strength, let this be your declaration that awareness, not avoidance, leads to true awakening. 4. The nervous system upgrade. Awakening is not only a spiritual journey, but also a profound physiological transformation that reshapes the very wiring of your being. During this process, your nervous system begins to shift from a constant state of alertness, emotional absorption, and survival mode to a higher frequency of awareness. At first, this transition feels disorienting. You may wake up feeling tired, overstimulated by sounds, lights, and even the smallest conversations. Everything that once seemed normal now feels too loud, too fast, too heavy. But this isn't a weakness, it's evolution. Your body is learning to operate in a new way, moving from reaction to observation, from emotional chaos to energetic clarity. The exhaustion is not a punishment. It's an initiation into a new way of being where your nervous system finally starts to synchronize with your expanded consciousness. For empaths, this shift can be especially intense. You've spent years absorbing the energy of others, unconsciously carrying their pain, their moods, their unspoken emotions as if they were your own. Your nervous system has been conditioned to absorb instead of witness, to rescue instead of rest. But spiritual awakening asks for something higher than it asks for mastery. It teaches you to feel without drowning, to care without collapsing, to love without losing yourself. The fatigue you experience during this transformation is your body's way of detoxing from years of energetic overload. You are no longer meant to live on adrenaline or emotional reactivity. You are learning to function from peace, not pressure. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is the essence of your transformation, bringing unconscious emotional patterns into awareness so that your body, mind, and soul can finally operate as one. As your spiritual awakening deepens, you begin to notice subtle changes within. The same situations that once triggered you now seem lighter. You start observing rather than reacting, feeling rather than fixing. Your nervous system, once overstimulated, learns the art of regulation. You begin to sense the energy behind people's words, to recognize truth not by logic, but by resonance. You can walk into a room and feel whether peace or chaos lives there, not because you are absorbing it, but because your awareness has become refined. This heightened perception may at first feel isolating, but it's actually liberation. You are no longer controlled by external noise. You are anchored within your own frequency. The fatigue fades as your system learns to sustain higher consciousness without collapsing under its intensity. This is what Jung called individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. It's not about rejecting others or withdrawing from life. It's about engaging with the world consciously, from a place of inner coherence. When your nervous system fully upgrades, you no longer need to protect your energy with walls. Your awareness itself becomes the shield. You learn to respond, not react to observe, not absorb to give, without losing yourself in the process. Spiritual awakening is, therefore, the merging of biology and divinity. It is your nervous system learning to hold light without burning out, to remain grounded while expanding beyond form. And with every breath, every quiet moment of awareness, your body and soul align more deeply, transforming overstimulation into serenity, exhaustion into clarity, and survival into conscious living. 5. Integration and new relationships. As you begin to integrate your shadow and awaken to who you truly are, your energy no longer fluctuates with every opinion or expectation around you. It stabilizes. You stop searching for safety in others because you have finally found it within yourself. The need to be rescued dissolves, replaced by a quiet confidence that you can hold yourself through any storm. This is the moment when spirituality stops being an idea and becomes a lived experience. You start to feel your own presence as your anchor, no longer defined by who approves of you, but by how deeply you stand in your truth. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And this is exactly what spiritual growth feels like, unfolding back into your own wholeness, piece by piece, layer by layer. When you reach this stage, solitude no longer feels like punishment. It becomes sacred realignment. You start to see that loneliness was never the absence of people, but the absence of connection to your authentic self. As you spend time in stillness, your inner frequency recalibrates. You stop craving noise, distractions, or shallow validation. You begin to listen to the language of your soul, the soft guidance that once got lost in the chaos of trying to please everyone else. This stillness purifies you, and as your energy becomes clear, you start attracting people who resonate with that same clarity. The relationships that now enter your life carry a different vibration. They are not built on performance, expectation, or dependency. They arise from mutual truth and emotional maturity. You find yourself surrounded by individuals who are not threatened by your authenticity, but inspired by it. These are soul-aligned relationships with people who meet you in honesty, not illusion. With them, you can breathe freely, speak openly, and exist without the pressure to be someone else. The connection feels calm, yet powerful, simple, yet profound, because it's no longer fueled by fear, it's anchored in presence. As your spiritual growth deepens, you start noticing that some people naturally drift away. The bonds that were built on insecurity or shared wounds can no longer hold when your energy no longer vibrates at that frequency. It's not betrayal, it's evolution. You realize that you don't have to chase anyone or hold on to what's trying to leave. The universe is simply clearing space for what aligns with your new level of consciousness. You begin to understand that endings are not losses. They are doorways into deeper truth. Every goodbye teaches you to rely less on the external and more on your own center. Through this process, love itself transforms. It becomes less about possession and more about resonance. You stop needing others to complete you because you finally feel complete within. The people you now attract mirror that inner wholeness. They're not here to fill a void, but to walk beside you in mutual growth. You start to see that genuine connection doesn't drain you. It nourishes you. It doesn't pull you out of alignment. It grounds you even more deeply in it. And as you continue to embody this authenticity, your presence alone becomes magnetic. You no longer seek to be understood by everyone because you understand yourself. You no longer fear being alone because solitude feels like home. This is the quiet power of spiritual growth. The realization that the relationships meant for you will recognize your soul without you having to prove your worth. What you attract now is a reflection of your integration, your stability, and your truth. You no longer reach for love. You radiate it. Leave your likes and subscribe to Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any future insights about your awakening journey and deeper human connections. Type in the comments, "I am ready to attract relationships that align with my higher self." 6. The deeper lesson. Awakening, as Carl Jung revealed through his profound spiritual wisdom, is not about distancing yourself from people. It's about returning so deeply to your inner world that you can meet others from a place of peace, clarity, and authenticity. When you awaken, something within you shifts. You stop chasing validation, and you begin to crave truth. You no longer wish to fill the silence. Instead, you listen to it. You begin to see that the exhaustion you feel around people isn't hatred. It's the soul's quiet rebellion against inauthenticity. As Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakes." When you start looking within, you realize how much of your energy used to be spent keeping up appearances, managing others' expectations, and playing roles that were never truly yours. Awakening strips all of that away. It leaves you raw, honest, and beautifully exposed to your true self. At first, this transformation can feel lonely. You'll lose some connections because the vibration of your new awareness no longer matches the frequency of those who thrive in illusion. But what you lose externally, you gain internally. You find the courage to sit with yourself, to feel without fleeing, to breathe without performing. Jung called this process individuation, the journey of becoming who you truly are beneath the masks. He said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that privilege requires solitude, silence, and surrender." Feeling tired of people, then, is not a failure. It's evidence of your soul refining its resonance. You are no longer compatible with small talk because your heart longs for truth. You no longer resonate with gossip because your mind is learning peace. The more you awaken, the more you understand that your fatigue comes not from people themselves, but from the energy of pretense, the heaviness of falsehood, and the emptiness of shallow connection. You begin to crave stillness because that's where your spirit heals. You learn to interact not out of need or habit, but from wholeness. You listen with empathy, but without absorption. Love without attachment, and give without depletion. Slowly, you realize awakening does not separate you from humanity. It transforms how you relate to it. You stop projecting your wounds onto others and start recognizing their pain with compassion. You stop trying to fix everyone and begin respecting divine timing. You understand that everyone is walking their own path of awakening, even if they don't see it yet. So when you feel tired of people, remember, your soul is recalibrating. It is teaching you the art of sacred distance, the ability to stay kind without being consumed, to stay open without losing your boundaries. Solitude becomes your sanctuary, not your punishment. It's where you hear the whispers of your higher self, where your intuition strengthens, and where peace becomes your natural state. In this sacred quiet, you realize that true connection doesn't come from being surrounded by people. It comes from being rooted in truth. That is the essence of Carl Jung's spiritual wisdom, the awakening that doesn't make you superior, but whole. Not detached, but deeply aligned. Feeling tired is simply your soul resting from lifetimes of pretending, as it learns once more how to live, love, and exist in divine authenticity. If awakening has made you feel distant from people, remember this truth. You're not broken, you're becoming whole. As Carl Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Each wave of fatigue, each moment of solitude is your soul's way of clearing space for deeper, more authentic connections. So instead of seeing your sensitivity as a weakness, treat it as sacred awareness, guiding you toward alignment. Let this be your practice. Honor your energy, speak your truth, and connect from wholeness, not habit. If this message resonates with you, share it with someone walking a similar path. And tell me in the comments, when did you first realize your energy no longer matched the world around you? I'd love to read your story. This is spiritual wisdom, and your awakening is only the beginning. Master your shadow. Master your mind. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Carl Jung once said, "Every shadow we ignore within ourselves becomes a silent puppeteer, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and choices without us even realizing it." On Spiritual Wisdom, we believe that mastering your shadow is not about eliminating darkness, but about transforming it into the very fuel that awakens your true mind and spirit. As you listen, I invite you to reflect. What hidden patterns or fears might be guiding your life right now? Share your thoughts in the comments, because the first step toward freedom is daring to name what has been unseen. 1. The shadow. What it is and why it matters. The shadow is not an external demon to be feared, but the hidden side of your own psyche, the place where you've buried emotions, impulses, and traits that you were told were unacceptable since childhood: anger, envy, selfishness, sadness. Yet repressing these parts never destroys them. They remain alive, influencing your decisions, shaping your relationships, and silently dictating the course of your life. Jung's warning rings true. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. The shadow is not evil in nature. It is unconscious, like a locked room in your own house that you refuse to enter. But inside that room is not only pain, it is also power, creativity, and untapped wisdom waiting for you to reclaim it. Many men, well into their 30s, 40s, or 60s, live under its influence without realizing it. They repeat destructive patterns, fall into the same broken relationships, lose themselves in the same conflicts, and wonder why life feels like an endless loop of disappointment. They call it destiny or bad luck, but it is the shadow at work, quietly pulling the strings from the background. Think of it as a reservoir of energy. Denied and ignored, it leaks into your life as uncontrolled rage, jealousy, despair. But faced directly, it becomes fuel for an inner fire that can be directed towards self-mastery, clarity, and purpose. This is why Jung insisted that wholeness does not come from rejecting the shadow, but from integrating it, because only then do you stand in the truth of your full humanity. In today's world, where men are told to hide fear, bury sadness, and never show weakness, the need to face the shadow is even more urgent. Suppressed emotions do not vanish. They build pressure, like a volcano waiting to erupt. And when they do, they destroy families, careers, and inner peace. Spirituality teaches us that light cannot exist without shadow. Both are necessary for wholeness. Spiritual awakening is not about pretending to be eternally positive, but about embracing the entire spectrum of who you are. If you felt restless, lost, or haunted by choices that make no sense, it is the shadow calling, urging you to listen. The path of integration requires courage because it demands radical honesty. It means admitting that you are capable of envy, rage, selfishness, and weakness. But the paradox is this: once acknowledged, these traits lose their destructive power and become tools for growth. A man who denies his anger becomes its prisoner, exploding unpredictably. A man who accepts his anger learns to channel it into boundaries, leadership, and strength. The shadow, once faced, becomes a teacher that sharpens your awareness, reveals your projections, and helps you act with greater intention rather than blind reaction. This practice begins in the smallest moments. Notice when your emotions feel larger than the situation at hand. Ask yourself, what is truly happening inside me? What am I refusing to see? Write it down, sit with it, or speak with someone you trust. Discomfort is not an enemy, it is a doorway. Each time you uncover a hidden piece of your shadow, you reclaim a lost fragment of your soul. Over time, this work leads to clarity, resilience, and a steady center from which no storm can easily shake you. To master the shadow is to accept that you are both light and darkness, both strong and vulnerable, both noble and flawed. This acceptance frees you from the exhausting battle of pretending, of wearing masks, of running from yourself. It allows you to step fully into your life with authenticity, presence, and power. This is more than psychology. It is a spiritual awakening, a return to wholeness that transforms not only how you see yourself, but how you move through the world, shaping your relationships, your work, and the legacy you leave behind. Have you ever faced your shadow and discovered what it was trying to teach you? If so, share your experience in the comments to inspire others. If not, comment "I will face it" so we can walk this path of self-mastery together. 2. The psychological cost of repression. When you repress the shadow within, it does not disappear. It lingers in the unconscious, gathering strength and influencing your life from the darkness. Carl Jung warned, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Every unacknowledged wound, every denied emotion, every hidden part of yourself continues to act in silence, shaping your choices, your relationships, and even your mental and physical well-being. Anxiety that strikes without warning, depression that drains your spirit, self-sabotage that undermines your goals, sudden emotional outbursts, chronic guilt, and lingering shame are not random weaknesses of character. They are signs of the shadow pressing against the walls you built to contain it. Left unaddressed, repression leads to toxic relationship patterns, cycles of guilt, and a sense of inner fragmentation that makes you feel divided, incomplete, and estranged from your own essence. Repression gains much of its strength through the persona, the mask you wear to survive in society, to win approval, to appear strong or agreeable, even when your inner truth is suffering. Jung described the persona as necessary but dangerous when mistaken for your authentic self. You may laugh when you want to cry, agree when your heart says no, or suppress your anger for fear of being judged. In doing so, you create a polished mask that pleases others but betrays your soul. As Shakespeare once observed, God has given you one face, and you make yourself another. That second face may protect you for a time, but beneath it, your shadow grows restless, leaking into your dreams, your fears, your sudden overreactions, and the choices you regret but cannot explain. Repressed shadow energy behaves like a caged animal, unseen yet powerful, agitated, and waiting for any chance to escape. It reveals itself in moments when you lash out at someone you love over something trivial, when envy bites at you despite your attempts to feel only joy for another's success, or when shame rises suddenly and clouds your sense of worth. These contradictions reveal a deeper truth. What is denied within does not vanish. It grows more insistent in silence. Nietzsche captured this danger when he wrote, "Beware that, when fighting monsters, you yourself do not become a monster." By repressing your shadow for too long, you risk being consumed by the very forces you refuse to face. The path of spiritual wisdom, illuminated by Carl Jung's insights, calls you not to destroy the shadow, but to integrate it, to reclaim the parts of yourself that you abandoned. To admit your anger is to find its hidden lesson in boundaries and courage rather than destruction. To embrace your vulnerability is to discover deeper authenticity and the power of genuine human connection. Integration is not perfection, it is wholeness, and wholeness ends the war within. The mind cannot be mastered while it is divided against itself. Each step you take toward integration weakens the grip of repression. The mask becomes unnecessary because your authentic self can breathe freely without fear of rejection. The shadow becomes less an enemy and more a guide, teaching you strength, compassion, and resilience. What once sabotaged you now empowers you, because in facing what was hidden, you claim the fullness of your humanity. Repression is costly, but awareness liberates. When you dare to face your shadow, you reclaim the freedom to live without disguise, without fear, and without shame. 3. Confrontation, not suppression, is the cure. You must consciously confront your shadow to stop being ruled by it, because every time you try to suppress it, you only give it more power. Though it may feel easier to look away, Carl Jung taught us that you are not just your good side. You are also what you fear most to admit. Facing that fear is uncomfortable, but it is also the birthplace of healing and resilience, the place where spiritual wisdom becomes reality, and where true spiritual growth begins to take root. Think about how this plays out in modern life. A man named David always calm at work, suddenly explodes when a colleague questions him, not because of the question itself, but because deep down, he still carries the weight of being dismissed and overlooked as a child. The shadow memory of "I am not respected" fuels his anger, and until he turns inward to acknowledge it, the pattern repeats. The moment David stops and admits, "This isn't only about today, it's about old pain I've been carrying," he opens the door to understanding rather than lashing out. And in that single act of honesty, the shadow loses its grip. Jung warned us that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. That truth explains why so many of us keep stumbling into the same mistakes. We are not cursed. We are simply unconscious of what drives us. Confronting our shadow is how we break that loop. This practice is not self-condemnation, but self-respect. Because the shadow does not only hide wounds, it also conceals gifts. Your anger may contain the courage to protect what matters. Your jealousy may reveal the path your soul longs to walk. Your perfectionism may be reshaped into a pursuit of excellence that inspires instead of shames. When you dare to bring these forces into the light, you stop being torn apart by them and instead become strengthened by them. So whenever you feel a strong reaction, pause and breathe. Name the emotion without judgment. Ask yourself, what is this really protecting? And then listen. Write down the answer. And, if needed, take a small outer step. Apologize, set a boundary, or ask for help. Because integration is not just insight, it is action that heals. Over time, with daily practice, you will notice that you no longer feel hijacked by sudden reactions, that your decisions grow clearer and your energy more grounded. The mind begins to trust you to tell the truth and no longer needs to defend itself with denial. This is how you master your mind by mastering your shadow. The lessons are simple, but life-changing. Facing discomfort is the doorway to growth. Naming your emotions reduces their control. Asking what they protect uncovers hidden needs. Taking small, conscious actions integrates your discoveries. And repeating this practice daily rewires your inner world. When you live this way, you honor your spirituality not with distant ideals, but with real courage. You expand your spiritual growth not by pretending to be pure, but by embracing the wholeness of who you are, and you finally begin to experience the freedom of a life no longer ruled by what you fear to admit. Leave your like, subscribe to our channel Spiritual Wisdom, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss powerful insights like this. And to affirm your commitment to true healing, type in the comments, "I confront my shadow and transform my mind." 4. The role of archetypes in shadow integration. During the process of shadow work, Carl Jung revealed that archetypes are not distant theories, but living forces that rise from the unconscious, shaping our emotions, decisions, and patterns in ways we often fail to notice. They are like invisible actors in the theater of the mind, sometimes guiding us, sometimes deceiving us, but always carrying a lesson. Among the most powerful archetypes that appear are the anima and animus, the self, and the trickster. And learning to recognize their presence becomes a turning point in both spirituality and spiritual awakening. For they can either illuminate your path or pull you back into the very darkness you are trying to escape. The anima and animus embody the inner feminine and masculine energies that live within every person. For men, the anima brings forth intuition, sensitivity, and the capacity to feel beyond logic, qualities that are often repressed in cultures that define masculinity only through toughness and control. To deny her is to deny half of your soul, but to embrace her is to find a balance that makes you more whole, compassionate, and deeply connected to life. The animus, in turn, represents structure, discipline, and decisiveness, helping you act with clarity and conviction when the world demands strength. Together, they act as bridges between the conscious and unconscious, teaching that true masculinity is not rigid dominance, but a dance between softness and strength, logic and intuition, discipline and creativity. When you honor both, you gain the courage to meet yourself fully without fear. Beyond these two figures lies the archetype of the self, the symbol of wholeness and integration. The self is not the ego, it is larger, containing both the light you proudly show and the shadow you try to bury. Spiritual traditions across cultures describe it as the higher self, the divine spark, the soul's true essence. When the self appears, often in dreams, visions, or in moments of crisis that strip away illusions, it calls you to live authentically, to shed the masks that society has forced on you, and to realize that real power lies not in conquering others, but in aligning with your inner truth. To awaken the self is to see that freedom is not the absence of struggle, but the courage to live as a whole being who accepts every part of himself, both the luminous and the dark. Yet shadow work is never without resistance, and that resistance often comes in the form of the trickster. This archetype thrives on inversion, disruption, and ego traps, leading you into self-sabotage or convincing you that you have already mastered yourself when you have only scratched the surface. The trickster whispers through temptation, pride, or complacency, trying to pull you back into old habits just when you are ready to break free. He is not there to destroy you, but to test whether your awakening is real or simply another mask. Many men stumble here, confusing fleeting progress for lasting transformation. But those who learn to recognize the trickster's games gain sharper awareness and deeper humility. In this way, even the trickster becomes a teacher, forcing you to refine your vigilance and deepen your commitment to the path. The anima and animus open the way to balance. The self points toward wholeness, and the trickster keeps you from arrogance and stagnation. Together, they create a map of the psyche, showing that your shadow is not an enemy to be feared, but a frontier to be explored. To face these forces with honesty is to master not only the hidden parts of your being, but also the restless mind that so often controls you. To integrate them is to experience a spiritual awakening that reshapes how you love, how you lead, and how you live. In the very depths of the unconscious, where darkness seems overwhelming, lies the key to becoming the man you were destined to be: whole, awake, and unshakably free. 5. Emotional intelligence through shadow work. When you choose to integrate your shadow instead of hiding from it, you begin to notice a remarkable shift in how you move through life. Because as Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Think of those moments when the smallest comment ignites a storm inside you, or when familiar frustrations keep circling back. These are not random accidents, but signals from the shadow, urging you to listen. When you finally turn toward them with spiritual wisdom, you become less reactive and more self-aware, not by suppressing emotions, but by learning to interpret their deeper meaning. The shadow holds enormous energy that, when ignored, becomes chaos, but when embraced, transforms into clarity, creativity, and emotional balance. Each time you acknowledge a fear, uncover the jealousy beneath your anger, or recognize a judgment that mirrors your own wound, you reclaim psychic energy that was once wasted on hiding. That energy becomes available for your art, your problem solving, your relationships, and the steady presence that draws others to you. This is the turning point where projection loses its grip. Instead of pushing your hidden insecurities or suppressed anger onto others, you pause and ask, what is this reaction teaching me about myself? In that moment of humility, you break free from blame and step into authorship of your life. Jung reminded us that everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. And this truth creates a bridge from conflict to self-knowledge. With practice, authenticity takes root in your daily life. You speak your truth with kindness, feel your emotions without drowning in them, set boundaries with calm strength, and discover that inner peace is not something to chase, but something that quietly arises when you stop pretending. Emotional strength, in this light, is not a hardened shield, but a supple resilience, the ability to hold grief without collapse, to welcome joy without clinging, to face criticism without breaking, and to admit mistakes without shame. Imagine a simple, everyday scenario. Your partner forgets a promise, your coworker interrupts you, or a driver cuts you off in traffic. Instead of reacting with instant heat, you can treat the surge within you as information, not instruction. By naming the feeling, tracing its root, and asking what it protects, you create space to respond with intention, whether that means calmly stating your need, setting a clear boundary, or choosing to reinterpret the situation with generosity. Slowly, these choices accumulate, and your mind no longer feels like a battlefield of impulses, but like a council where every part of you has a voice, and you, the conscious self, hold steady authority. Carl Jung also warned that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. This is the essence of shadow work, not running from darkness, but using it as raw material for growth. When you embrace this process, you transform hidden pain into wisdom, confusion into clarity, and inner tension into creative force. By bringing light into your own depths, you become less reactive and more aware. You stop projecting pain onto others, and you cultivate authenticity that feels natural and unshakable. Through Carl Jung's teachings and the path of spiritual wisdom, the message is clear. True emotional intelligence is born not from escaping your shadow, but from befriending it. Because only then can you unlock the creativity, balance, and quiet strength that were always waiting for you. If you're still with us on this journey of mastering emotional intelligence through shadow work, comment below, "I'm aware of my emotions." Your feedback helps us grow and connect deeper with you. 6. Practical daily tools for shadow integration. Every one of us carries a hidden side, what Carl Jung called the shadow. And it is not an enemy to be destroyed, but a part of you waiting to be understood, embraced, and transformed. To keep this shadow integrated requires daily practices that ground you in awareness, honesty, and courage, because real spirituality and spiritual growth are not about escaping what is dark, but shining light into it. Self-observation is the first tool. the art of watching your triggers and reactions with calm attention. When you feel jealousy, anger, or insecurity arise, instead of reacting blindly, pause and ask yourself what deeper wound is being touched. A common example is when a colleague receives praise and you feel overlooked. The irritation is not just about the moment. It is a signal from the shadow, reminding you of an old story about not being valued. By noticing it, you loosen its grip and turn what could have been another cycle of bitterness into a chance for awareness. Reflective journaling builds on this by taking the storm of thoughts and emotions out of your head and placing them on paper. Writing slows you down and forces clarity, exposing repeated patterns you might otherwise miss. Over time, you may see that every time you feel criticized, you retreat or grow defensive. And through writing, you trace this back to childhood moments of rejection. By giving the shadow a voice through your journal, you take away its power to control you from the dark. Because what is written is no longer hidden. Dream analysis opens yet another door. Because your unconscious speaks at night in symbols and images. A recurring dream of being chased might be your psyche showing you what truths you are avoiding in waking life. When you track and reflect on these dreams, you are in dialogue with the deepest layers of yourself, receiving guidance from within that no outside teacher can give you. Mindfulness then anchors you in the present, teaching you that between stimulus and response lies a sacred pause where freedom lives. If someone cuts you off on the road, your shadow may want to explode in rage, but with mindfulness, you can take a breath and choose patience. It is not about suppressing the anger, but meeting it with awareness, transforming a reflex into a conscious choice. Boundary setting is equally essential, because every time you say yes when you mean no, you feed the shadow of resentment and self-betrayal. Protecting your needs and energy is not selfish, but an act of integrity. When you decline a request you cannot fulfill, you affirm your worth, and in doing so, you prevent hidden anger from festering in the unconscious. Periodic persona check-ins are the final practice, especially relevant in an age where social media constantly tempts us to project masks of success, happiness, or perfection. Asking yourself, "What am I hiding to fit in?" keeps you honest about the roles you play. Perhaps you always act strong when you feel weak, or pretend to be endlessly positive while sadness weighs on you. By noticing these masks, you begin to strip them away and allow your true self to emerge. As Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And that privilege is only possible when the shadow is welcomed instead of denied. The lesson is clear. Observe your triggers to reclaim freedom. Journal to uncover patterns. Study your dreams to hear your soul. Practice mindfulness to meet life with presence. Set boundaries to protect your worth, and question your masks to return to authenticity. These daily tools are not just practices, but pathways back to wholeness, reminding you that mastering the shadow is not about destroying darkness, but about integrating it into light. And in that integration lies the heart of true spirituality and spiritual growth. 7. This is a lifelong journey, not a quick fix. Shadow integration is not a quick solution that you can apply once and be done with. It is a lifelong journey, a discipline that requires patience, honesty, and courage. As you grow, new layers of your shadow surface, revealing aspects of yourself you thought were resolved, but are simply waiting for the right moment to show themselves. You may conquer one form of fear, only to discover another hidden beneath a new responsibility or relationship. You may believe you have overcome anger, only to realize it still lingers when life challenges you in unexpected ways. This is why Carl Jung insisted that the more you evolve, the more refined your awareness must become. Awareness must be sharpened like a blade, because only with clarity can you see the subtle ways your shadow still shapes your choices, your words, and your daily habits. Without this awareness, you risk being controlled by what you refuse to acknowledge. Jung warned that ignoring the shadow invites chronic psychological suffering, and you can see this truth all around you. The man who hides his insecurity behind arrogance ends up alone and misunderstood. The man who refuses to face his unresolved anger distracts himself with work, alcohol, or endless busyness. But inside, he is breaking down. Suppression does not eliminate the shadow. It makes it stronger, a silent master pulling the strings of your life from the dark. This is the tragedy of a man who avoids himself and becomes imprisoned by what he refuses to face. But when you dare to turn toward the shadow and confront it with honesty, something powerful happens. You reclaim your freedom, your strength, and your wholeness. You no longer live as a divided man, one part polished for the world, while another hides in shame and fear. You live as an integrated man, unafraid of the truth that resides within you. The rewards of this integration are profound. By embracing your shadow, you transform weakness into wisdom, fear into power, and shame into authenticity. You begin to walk with a sense of inner authority because nothing within you is being denied. This is the essence of spirituality. It is not about pretending to be pure light, nor about escaping suffering, but about holding both your light and darkness in balance. True spiritual awakening comes when you no longer run from yourself, when you allow every part of your being to be seen, understood, and embraced. The shadow you fear is not your enemy, but the hidden doorway to your liberation. As Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. By making your shadow conscious, you no longer stumble blindly into repeating patterns. You rise above them and take control of your own destiny. This is the work of a lifetime, but it is also the path to becoming a whole and powerful man. 8. Final message: choose truth over comfort. Mastering the shadow, as Carl Jung revealed, is a one-way path. Once you uncover what has been buried in the darkness, you cannot turn back or unsee it. The shadow is not some distant concept. It is the hidden side of your own soul. The parts of you that you deny, repress, or try to bury beneath the polished mask of social acceptance. Yet these denied aspects do not disappear. They sink into the unconscious, shaping your life silently, creating patterns you may mistakenly call fate. Jung's warning echoes here. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Facing your shadow is not about destroying who you are. It is about reclaiming the lost fragments of your spirit and integrating them into your wholeness. Real transformation demands courage, for it asks you to confront not only the parts of yourself that shine, but also the ones that sting the anger, jealousy, grief, and longing you try to hide. These emotions linger like shadows, whispering from the depths, until you finally turn to face them. By stepping into this confrontation, you begin the true work of spiritual wisdom, where spirituality is no longer about light alone, but about making the darkness conscious and using it as a source of growth. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious, Jung reminds us. And it is this courageous confrontation that opens the door to authentic awakening. The shadow, once feared as an enemy, becomes your greatest teacher. It strips away illusions, revealing the truth of who you are beneath every mask, every pretense, every desperate attempt to be accepted. In this raw honesty, you discover freedom. When you have faced the worst within yourself, you become emotionally unshakable. No insult, rejection, or opinion can destabilize you, because you have already walked through the fire of your own depths. You begin to live authentically, rooted in an aliveness that others can sense immediately. Those who walk this path radiate presence, because they no longer trade their truth for approval. They embody a life aligned with reality rather than illusion. To choose this journey is to choose truth over comfort. Comfort keeps you trapped in the same cycles, but truth liberates you, even if it first burns. This is the essence of spiritual awakening. It is not about ignoring what hurts, but about embracing it, transforming it, and allowing it to shape you into someone fully alive. The question you must ask yourself is simple. Do you want to remain in comfort, or do you want to live in truth? If you are ready, speak it into existence as a commitment to your own growth. Comment, "I am willing to face my shadow," as a declaration that you choose courage, authenticity, and awakening over the illusion of safety. Throughout this journey, we've explored Carl Jung's powerful insight that by facing and mastering your shadow, you unlock the key to mastering your own mind. True growth begins not by denying the darker parts of ourselves, but by integrating them, transforming hidden fears into wisdom and inner strength. As you step away from this video, I encourage you to reflect. What part of your shadow is asking to be acknowledged today? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your story may inspire someone else on their path. And if this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us here at Spiritual Wisdom for more guidance on your journey towards self-mastery and inner peace.